Welcome into the 82nd episode of the Sabremetrix podcast. My name is Bill. Alongside me, as always, is Walt. Walt, how you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good. I feel like we have a lot of new Sabres news to talk about, a lot of new stuff coming out in the last 2 or 3 days. Only a few days away from the NHL draft, and then right after that's free agency. So a lot of Sabres news.
We have a jam-packed episode to the point where we had to bump a segment to our live stream, which is going to be Friday evening starting at 6:45 p.m. Eastern time. That will be on YouTube, and we also stream to X, but just come hang out with us during the NHL draft. We're going to be chatting. That's when Walt's going to do his mock draft 3.0. Really looking forward to just the busyness and the decentralized draft structure and everything that's going to come with it. So subscribe on YouTube. We have an upcoming event already posted there. So it's already up and you'll see it in your subscribe feed. So subscribe on YouTube. We appreciate the support. And let's get right into it because, like you said, there's a lot to talk about. But we're going to start on the positive, which is Alexander Mogilny, after 17 years of eligibility, is finally a Hall of Famer. Walt wanted to get your response to that.
Definitely cool to see Mogilny in the Hall of Fame. I obviously never watched him play before, so that was before my time. But my dad always tells stories about that season where he scored all those goals, and he was a part of a very fun era, Sabres hockey with Pat LaFontaine. And with his statistics, he was kind of right on the edge of getting into the Hall of Fame. But I think when you factor in just all the other stuff, like defecting from the Soviet Union and coming over to the NHL and kind of paving the way for so many Russian stars to come into the league in those seasons. I think if you factor all that, I think he's an important piece of the history of hockey. So I think he's more than deserving to be in the Hall of Fame, and it's cool to see him finally get into the Hall of Fame, like 16 years later. So it's nice to see.
Yeah, better late than never for sure. And that big season where he had 76 goals in 77 games was 92-93, as you can see pulled up on the screen here. But for anyone that's just listening audio wise, 77 games, 76 goals, which is just crazy. 51 assists for 127 points. And like you said, just with all of the other things that went along with Mogilny playing in the NHL, plus his productivity. He was over a point per game player, almost played 1,000 games, obviously had over 1,000 points. So, yeah, I definitely think he was deserving. And I think just like the gravity of it, I didn't fully understand the whole Mogilny thing. I knew there was, like a really good Russian player that used to play for the Sabres, but until I grew up a little bit, I didn't really understand the situation. So the one thing that really stuck out to me was one, and I tweeted about this, check out the documentary that Sportsnet did on that, where they interviewed um, Meehan, Luce, a bunch of other people that were involved with the defection that happened when they were over in Sweden. The one thing that really stuck with me was that Mogilny was considered an officer in the Army. Yes, he was like a really good player, but all of those guys were officers. They were part of the Army. It was like the Red Army hockey team. And some people might already know this, so apologies. But for anyone that didn't know, like these weren't just like it wasn't just a hockey player that wanted to just leave Russia and go somewhere else. This was the on the same level of someone deserting the army, an officer deserting the army. That's how the Soviets saw it, and we all kind of know how they handle those kinds of things, or any army or nation or whatever handles those kinds of things. So, along with being an incredible hockey player and just being so fast and shifty and just all the stuff that he had to go through off the ice as well, because just because he was able to get to the United States doesn't mean his worries were over. So definitely deserving. Like I said, better late than never, and super happy for him. And hopefully, that all kind of puts it to bed. And I think that's pretty much it when it comes to Mogilny. I don't really want to speak about too much about the type of player he is, but as you can see on the screen here, he was constantly putting up points, and it is kind of funny that he ended his career with the Albany River Rats. I just found that to be an interesting little tidbit of information. So, anything on Mogilny before we move on to all the other aspects of the Sabres week?
Just a fun hockey career, and I loved using him in NHL 06 when I was younger too. So I guess that's how I remember Mogilny. I kind of remember him as a Leaf in NHL 06.
All right, well there you have it. Moving on to JJ Peterka. It seems to be a weekly segment here on the Sabremetrix podcast. Oh boy, let's just play the clip from Frank Saravelli, and then I have a little fun to have after this. But let's get the clip up first, and we'll go from there.
Get it done, but I don't think 1 year would get it done. But I think if you did a 2 or a 3 year deal, a 3 year deal with all signing bonus, $27 million due within 700 and some days, might not be easy.
Yeah, no,
they can do it. I mean, the owner has the wherewithal.
Yeah.
But do you really want to match it and dig into your own pocket for a player that doesn't want to be there?
So the Sabres
that's what he's up against. Kevin Adams is, well, if I'm really just going to have to go down the offer sheet path, there's teams that have put top end first round picks in this year's Friday's draft on the table already.
Yeah.
So are you just better off taking a top end pick in a player in a draft that you have studied a lot and know? Or do you prefer the fear of the unknown? The Sabres aren't interested in futures. They've told teams, and their target is a right shot defenseman. They're looking for a right shot defenseman. That's what they're in the market for.
And they also might be trading Bowen Byram. So
they are trading Bowen Byram, but the question is, will they get this deal done first?
All right, there's a lot to unpack there. The one thing I'm going to do, sports fans will know what I'm referring to, but if you don't, there is a journalist that covers the NBA that a couple of years ago went viral for a certain take. Why is Frank Saravelli, with his last week at the Daily Faceoff, suddenly putting out stuff, what seems like daily, or we're seeing stuff daily about JJ Peterka, a little bit from Elliot Friedman. But why is it that Frank Saravelli is the one that has all the JJ Peterka information? Quite honestly, I don't know. I just kind of thought this was funny, but it was like, why? Why is this happening? But it does raise an actual point that I wanted to make of, it feels like Alan Walsh is just beating the crap out of the Sabres. And like, obviously, and we'll get to it in the Kevin Adams press conference, but all of the information that's being said right now is not coming from the Sabres. So it's coming from the other camp. Well, what do you make of everything here?
I think Alan Walsh is definitely one of the tougher agents in the NHL. And I think he's doing kind of what every agent wants to do. He's a little bit more aggressive with it. But I think if you're an NHL agent right now, you have to be looking at guys like Sam Reinhart winning back-to-back cups in Florida. You have to be looking at Jack Eichel winning a cup in Vegas. You have to look at O'Reilly winning a cup in St. Louis. You have to think, I don't want my client in Buffalo. Like, I want my client elsewhere. I want my client somewhere that could win championships. I want my client somewhere that could finish top 5 in awards. I want somewhere my client could go and, earn a ton of money and earn a lot of money in that next contract too. So I think the Sabres have definitely found themselves in a tough situation with Alan Walsh because he's a tough agent. And, his portfolio of NHL players, Peterka is near the top in terms of talent with those guys, at least in terms of the players he has left. So I could easily see him pushing hard for JJ Peterka to play elsewhere. And it seems like that's what he's trying to do because, kind of playing into this offer sheet thing, I think that's kind of just a ploy to pressure the Sabres into trading him out of fear that they could get an offer sheet like Frank Saravelli brought up, where it's a lot of bonus money, a lot of money up front, and Sabres just don't do those types of contracts because they're a cheap team. So I think he's just trying to build up that fear that we could put you in a tough situation financially if you don't move Peterka before offer sheet season.
Yeah, absolutely. Really just knowing the Sabres are kind of in a vulnerable situation and taking advantage of that, quite frankly. I wanted to pull this up because you did mention it. It's a little tough for people to see. Yeah, that's actually really not going to be too helpful for people. So I'll pull it off. But like you said, Alan Walsh, Huberdeau is one of the guys that he represents. Marc-Andre Fleury, obviously, we all know what happened when it comes to Vegas and that. Jonathan Drouin, Pacioretty, but it really is it's pretty much just Huberdeau, Perron, David
They're all
Yurchek.
old guys though. Like the
Yeah,
young guys, it's just
Nick
really
DeSimone.
Peterka.
So like, yeah, Peterka's the youngest and probably best player that he has under his watch. So this isn't necessarily surprising that Alan Walsh is kind of making it difficult for the Sabres. So I don't know. I mean, it very much seems like JJ Peterka wants out. I don't really want to hear anything else because it hasn't been refuted on the other side. And again, we will get to the Kevin Adams comments and everything like that. So also wanted to bring up the Bowen Byram mention that was at the end of that clip as well, where like he is getting traded. He is getting traded. Do you think that decreases Bowen Byram's trade value? Again, he is a defenseman and a relatively, depending on who you ask, a high octane defenseman that some teams, teams obviously overvalue defensemen from what people assume. I'm thinking of Rasmus Ristolainen when I say that because we all assumed like he's not going to get that much. Next thing you know, there's a first round pick coming back for him. What do you think about the Bowen Byram situation? And who do you think maybe gets traded first?
It's going to be interesting because I do think if Peterka's move, there would be pressure to move him first because I think Byram's a guy you could kind of ride into this offseason. But I do think Byram, he'll have value. Like there's not many young defensemen that put up his point totals that have his draft pedigree that are going to be readily available this offseason. And there's a lot of teams around the NHL with like a dismal defense. With really nobody that could step in those power play 1 minutes, like no one that could produce points on the back end. Like there's 32 teams in the NHL now. One of those teams is going to have to think they could use him as a number one defenseman. So I do think there is some value there. And I do think it's important for the Sabres to get the best deal they can with moving Byram because I think he's a piece that's kind of redundant for them right now. He's a piece who played well with Dahlin, but last year everyone played well with Dahlin. So I think he's really not that valuable to the Sabres. So if they could get a great asset for him, I think that would be a huge positive move for Buffalo.
Yeah, I definitely think there's still value with Byram, but being an RFA and the assumption that he is already leaving, it's a little worrisome. So obviously there's going to be some action on him this week. I'd be surprised if he isn't traded by, I don't know, maybe the end of the draft. It could happen, but we'll see. I think the Sabres are really going to try to stick out for the best value that they can get for him, and they've been adamant that they're trying to get NHL players, but we'll see what actually happens. Maybe they have to end up taking another first round pick for this year or whatever it may be. So we'll see what assets are coming back in the Bowen Byram trade. And that is all for the updates when it comes to JJ Peterka and Byram. But I wanted to get more on the after effects or the way that people will view the JJ Peterka situation. So JJ Peterka is very much seemingly wanting out of Buffalo. And we're getting updates every single day. It's this team. It's this team. It's this team. We are recording Tuesday evening, the 24th of June. And just today, we had more rumors come out. This one's actually from Andrew Peters of the After the Whistle podcast, basically saying the teams showing the most interest in Peterka are Pittsburgh and Toronto. And the rumors surrounding JJ Peterka wanting out of Buffalo may be exaggerated. I mean, okay. And Peterka wants to be considered the man on the Sabres. Again, these are from Andrew Peters from After the Whistle. I don't really know what to make of that. My question to you is, if you had to choose one player, and I'm not saying people have to, absolutely not, but if you had to choose one player to boo at Sabres games, who would you boo? JJ Peterka or Jack Eichel? And the last thing I'll say about this before I let you go off is, yes, Eichel did no favors after that first game when he was getting booed and the comments that he made about Buffalo and the fans specifically. And Peterka hasn't done that. But let's be honest, Buffalo might have won the battle that night, but they lost the war because Eichel's with Vegas, thriving, winning a cup. He's won that battle. That was also after 6 years of him playing for the Sabres and having a dispute over his neck. Not a finger, not his ankle, not his elbow, not his shoulder, his neck. Played 6 seasons for the Sabres. Peterka's played 3. He just became an RFA, and he's already bullying his way out. I don't know. I'm not saying you have to choose between the two. It's like, well, if you boo Peterka, you can't boo Eichel. No, absolutely not. You can do whatever you want. Personally, I'm not much of a booer when I'm at the game unless it's something egregious, but I feel like people are not going to take too kindly to this. Constant rumors all the time. Then you have different information. Well, he doesn't actually want out. Well, he does want out. Here's all the different teams that he's been linked to. What do you make of all that? Do you think that Sabres fans are actually going to just let this just roll off their back? Or do you think they're going to be upset and he's going to hear it the next time he's playing in Buffalo?
It's going to be interesting because I know my take would be I'm not going to boo a single former Sabre player until Terry Pegula becomes a serious owner and until they get rid of Kevin Adams, because to me, those are the only 2 guys I'm booing right now is Terry Pegula and Kevin Adams, because I think Kevin Adams is, kind of complicit in everything that's happened with the Sabres so far. Like, he's pretty much a puppet for ownership. So I think those 2 guys, like, I've honestly been thinking about just going to the home opener for the Sabres this season just to boo Kevin Adams in the intro, because I feel like that's going to be a fun moment for Sabres fans. Probably won't be a sold-out game, but it'll probably be very loud boos when they introduce Kevin Adams. So, yeah, I think in terms of booing, I think Sabres fans kind of won't be too upset at Peterka, because I think they're starting to realize that all these good players are going to start wanting out. Like, if Peterka wants out this summer, what's stopping Tage and Dahlin? Obviously different contract situations, but what's stopping them from kind of playing hardball next summer and being like, I'm not happy, trade me? Because it seems like Sabres have traded every guy that's, kind of come forward and said they're unhappy. So I think for me, I think, and even for Sabres fans as a whole, I think they're kind of starting to realize that it's not the players, it's like the man sitting in the owner box, the man sitting in the press box with the GM title.
All right. So Walt will boo other people. I'm just not much of a booer. I also go to every Eichel game because I have a friend that's a Vegas fan, and it's a tradition yearly we go, and I don't want to be, he's got 50 people booing around him, so I don't want to be another person sitting in his ear booing the crap out of him. So that's up to Sabres fans. I can totally understand your perspective on that, saying, look, this is deeper than Peterka. This is deeper than any other player that wants out here, because it all rises to the top. So it's unfortunate it's gotten to this point. We'll see how fans react to Peterka whenever he comes back to Buffalo, because it seems like he's probably played his last game with the Sabres. But it would be interesting to see if the Sabres play hardball too. So there's a lot to make of what's going to happen this week, and we will be alongside you guys as always for everything there, especially if any kind of trade breaks. So keep an eye out on the YouTube channel. We'll definitely get something out whenever some kind of big trade happens, whether it's Peterka or Byram. And next up on the list is, oh boy, the Kevin Adams press conference, everyone. I'll speak for myself and I'll let Walt go. When I saw this was going to be a thing this morning, again, we were recording Thursday evening. Episodes coming out in full on Wednesday, and then clips will come out after. But I was like, oh boy, it's probably not going to be great. I didn't expect anything. I didn't expect to be walking away thinking, oh, that was great. And then he got the talking, and there's definitely some pain points that people are pointing out. Walt, did you want to say anything before I cue up these clips from the press conference?
I just think it's, I think we've gotten to that point where every press conference Adams does is it just doesn't help. Like, he's almost better off just not speaking at this point. And I think just even looking at the social media comments, you can see how frustrated fans are. Like, I literally ratioed the post about the recap of the Adams presser at the photo of Michael Frolik. I ratioed it like 10-1. Like, that's pretty insane to be able to do that. Like, it kind of just shows, like, just how frustrated people are at this team. Like it's pretty crazy that they're running it back with Adams, and I think it's pretty clear that he has his work cut out for him this offseason to prove himself. So yeah, not good.
Sure does. So this is him talking about, I believe this is him talking about the rumors with Peterka. I mislabeled these, so apologies on that. But let's get this up and see what he said.
Positive on the JJ front there from those conversations.
So is he asked to be moved?
Get him, Harrington.
This is the best way I would say. I don't think it's probably productive or beneficial for me to get into specifics on our players right now. This is the time
To pause. That's a yes.
Yeah.
So that's a yes. Just want to pause there. Okay, we're going to keep going.
of year where there's so much going on, and there's probably, Mike, a lot of misinformation out there, and I guess probably leave it at that.
Okay, the thing about the misinformation is there's been no pushback. I understand that the Sabres have really locked down their leaks. That thing used to be super leaky. But yeah, now it might be beneficial for them to maybe leak something to Matthew Fairburn, just pulling out a beat reporter. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this. Maybe that's a bad decision, but what did you make of those comments specifically on Peterka and how kind of non-committal and almost like unprepared he was for that question?
It's definitely interesting, and that answer is kind of like the textbook answer if a guy actually asked out. Because I feel like if he was willing to commit to being a Sabre, he'd be like, no, he never asked out. He's a little frustrated, but he never asked out. Instead, we get like that chuckle from him and just that smirk. I feel like that smirk is pretty frustrating for Sabres fans. So I don't know. It's just a typical Adams presser, in my opinion.
Oh, man. Well, it gets better. It gets better, Walt. Let's cue up the next one here. Yeah, it's
Get
gets
better,
better, but
and
folks.
I don't know. Like I get memos on my desk every morning from PR of things, and I feel, if I'm being honest, like I feel bad for our fans. The stuff that's out there, there's so much misinformation, so much of it's nonsense. I mean, someone that has no idea what they're talking about reporting that we were going to buy Sammy out. We've never had that conversation once. Like, it's ridiculous. So I don't even think it's worth me really getting into it. But I guess I'd just leave it at that.
I get what he's saying. But to say that you feel bad for fans because of misinformation, the only reason that any of this is coming about is because of the incompetence of the Sabres. And he's the head of it as the GM. And to say that you haven't even discussed buying out Samuelsson? Excuse me? That's insane. I've been calling for that since January, and I might have been viewed as being an emotional fan back then, but I genuinely think they need to look at that. And to say you haven't even looked at it, it's either a lie or you guys are insane. Walt, what's your opinion on what we just heard there?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I also thought it's interesting too how like he gets like PR stuff like in terms of what people are talking about with the Sabres. Like maybe he's even seen stuff from our show or some of our tweets,
which scares me.
Yeah,
personally.
And it looks like whoever is handing that info didn't do their research properly, because I know that Samuelsson buyout was brought up on one of those podcasts, but I remember listening to it. They just brought it up as something that would make sense for the Sabres to do. I don't think they mentioned once in that it was something the Sabres were considering doing. Like, it absolutely is something they should consider doing. But when they brought that up, it was kind of just the fact that Samuelsson is a younger player. It's a more manageable buyout. I believe it would be like a $700,000 cap hit per season. So if you put 2 and 2 together, it makes a ton of sense for the Sabres to do it. And it would save Terry Pegula $14 million in cash. So, there's a lot of reasons why the Sabres should do it. But yeah, that clip, I think the other funny part too was how he said he's frustrated for the fans. And, not from his incompetence as a GM, but from information they're hearing from Frank Saravelli and Elliot Friedman. Like, that's probably the least frustrating thing as a fan. I think the more frustrating thing is being a mediocre hockey team every year and being in the middle of a record-breaking playoff drought.
Yeah, I'm trying to find anything about the whole Samuelson buyout thing, and I just after a quick search, I wasn't able to find the specifics of it. But they are definitely trying to shop him. It sounds like. Um, I have a hard time believing that someone wouldn't take him on for, dude, take a 7th round pick 3 years from now. I don't care. So it's a bad look when it comes to handing out a lot of long-term contracts, one of which being Matthias Samuelsson, another one being Dylan Cousins, which you had to sell
For
off
another
and
bad long-term contract.
for another bad long-term contract and giving a 2nd round pick. Like, I understand you've got JBD back as well, but yeah, this is tough. This is a tough look for the Sabres and the organization. The fan base is, a lot of people are really calling for the buyout because it is so cheap based off of his age and saving money that way. But I don't know. Where do you even take the look, we just need to try to power through with this guy versus we need to cut our losses and we'll take any kind of trade or a buyout? Like, what do you think? It's overblown that, like, yes, he needs to be bought out or he needs to be traded for something that is very minuscule? Do you think it's like an addition by subtraction? Because everyone knows my opinions on him. I don't think he's a good defenseman. Or fair enough, he's just not the right fit for Buffalo. If you want me to be super fair, maybe he's just not the right fit for Buffalo. But I just don't think he can be on the Sabres anymore. But you don't, like, if you can get something good for him, why take something bad or even buy him out? So what do you make of all of the maybe more emotional reactions to Samuelson? Try to be the level head here, especially for someone like me who is not necessarily level headed in the situation.
I mean, I don't think I'll be level-headed either, because I do think in terms of his on-ice play, I think, I could be level-headed in terms of, like, his on-ice play. Like, he's fine. Like, he's not someone where the Sabres get caved in whenever he's on the ice. Like, he's like a fine depth defenseman. But I do think the issue arises from, that Stefan Nason hit that we talked about last episode. Like, him not stepping in there, him not stepping in a bunch of other post-whistle situations. I think the Sabres paid this guy to be a physical defensive defenseman. And even though his metrics aren't horrible, he's none of that. Like, he's not a physical shutdown defenseman. He doesn't get an after the whistle stuff. He's a big guy, but he doesn't play big. And he seems like a friendly guy too. Like, all his teammates love him. But when it comes down to it, it's frustrating to get laid out in the center of the ice and not have the biggest guy on the ice step in and try to do something. So I think just in terms of resetting the culture, I think you got to move on from Samuelson. And I think I'm at the point where I'd take anything to trade for him. Like, Sabres get a 3rd round pick, I'd be like, perfect. We get out of that contract and we get a draft pick that we can either pick with or throw in a trade or something.
Agreed. It just has to happen. I don't think he's a top 4 defenseman. That's what the Sabres are looking for. Try to get something for him, a little addition by subtraction. I'm very much on the side of, besides certain players, like, try to remake your roster as best as possible, but also just because you're changing people doesn't make it good, but also bringing in better players. So who knows, maybe they can get some kind of player out of it, even if it's someone because maybe they are holding on to Clifton, but maybe another person that's in the bottom 6 just for now, kind of thing. Like, just get something of value. Maybe it's even someone they can put the
Clifton
deadline.
hits players too. Like, sorry to interrupt, but at least Clifton, like, plays with heart. At least he steps in and he's the smallest guy on the ice.
Yeah, Clifton's what, 5 inches shorter. I don't know weight wise, but like Samuelson, he might not be the tallest guy on the ice because you have someone like Tage or Power or Greenway out there, but he's probably the heaviest.
He's up there in height too. He's like 6'4". He's gotta play physical.
You have to. That was half the reason they drafted him. He has a long reach. He's got a pro game, and he's a physical defensive defenseman. Well, if he's not a physical defensive defenseman and you're just relying on his long reach in the NHL, you're in trouble, man. You are in trouble. And that contract extension at the time looked good because he had one decent year playing with the one guy that pretty much anyone can play with.
Not even a full season either. When they signed
even
it,
full
it was
season.
like 3/4 of a season. Not even. It was like
Exactly.
it was a crazy contract, and yeah, I think they're kind of showing why they were clowned for that contract at the time. I know I took a lot of heat for criticizing that contract at the time, but you just don't give that term of money to someone who, if they hit their ceiling, would make like what 1 million more per year on his cap hit. Like if a guy like Samuelson with his skill set, I mean, he's limited offensively. He's not really physical, so a guy like
It's
that
crazy.
probably maxes out at 3-4 million or so. So why make that bet before you even have to? Just bridge players like that.
Like, it's one of those things. There was no pressure for them to sign him to that contract. This wasn't Skinner.
Yeah.
This wasn't Peterka. This wasn't Alex Tuck. This is Matthias Samuelson. So I don't know. Hopefully he's on some yacht enjoying some beers with his boy Jack Quinn. I can't. Sorry, I can't see him in a Sabres uniform anymore. I just can't.
Yeah.
As much as I don't want to see Alex Tuck leave, I want to see Samuelson leave. I don't know if that makes sense to people, but that's the way it works out of my mind. So there's somewhere to start, and apparently they haven't even discussed or thought about or anything like that about buying out Matthias Samuelson. So there's the latest on that. The last topic, we might be able to squeeze in some other stuff that wasn't necessarily on the sheet here, but last one I wanted to get into, especially because we were definitely talking about this draft, and I was a little bit more into drafts back then, but the big trade doesn't involve the Sabres, but it's still interesting. Trevor Zegras was traded to the Philadelphia Flyers for Ryan Poehling, a 2025 second-round pick and a 2026 fourth-round pick. Wanted to get your thoughts on that before kind of giving my spiel, because I have actually kind of like a unique perspective when it comes to, I grew up in Philly and I kind of know how they take to a player like Zegras. So, what did you think about this? And what did you think about just the overall value of Zegras and a few of the other guys in that draft as well, like Turcotte, for example? What do you think of what Anaheim got, what Philadelphia got, just kind of the overall value of Zegras? Was it overblown? And it makes it very interesting that they did this right after firing Tortorella, when Tortorella was the guy that flamed Zegras for the way he plays when Zegras wasn't even playing for the Flyers. So wanted
Yeah.
to get your opinions on this one.
I do think Trevor Zegras might have like the worst PR team in the NHL, because I feel like so many people view him as just like a kid that goes out there and tries Michigans and is like a hot dog and isn't a team player. And I think last season he definitely didn't have a good year. He was really poor defensively, but he still has that offensive skill. He still has that playmaking potential. He's still relatively young. Like, he's not that young. He's same draft year as Cousins, but he's still young enough where he could still have a few good seasons under his belt. So I think for a team like Philly that kind of lacks skill, I think this trade makes so much sense for them. Like Ryan Poehling, I think he's like a spicier Peyton Krebs. Like, I wouldn't really view Poehling as like anything remarkable. Like, kind of looks like a bottom six forward and second round pick. Obviously not crazy valuable. Fourth round pick. Sabres have two of those in this draft, so those really aren't that valuable. So it's just, I think it's a very easy gamble for Philadelphia. And I brought this up on Twitter. I kind of said I'd probably rather have Zegras right now than a guy like Josh Norris, just because I think Zegras has, still some potential, and the cost to get him was a lot less. And I do think, that passing ability, that skill he has, that's translatable in a proper system. I do think Anaheim, it's kind of been all over the place the past few years. I don't really think they truly know what they want to be. So I think a guy like Zegras is kind of just left out there, and a team like Philly is looking for skill. I think it just made so much sense for them to make that deal.
One, I think it's really cool that he'll be able to play with Michkov and just kind of see what happens there. I think the Sabres could have been interested in him for one of the reasons. One, their center depth is just not great. after having guys like Eichel and then Tage and Cousins and Middlestat. Now their center depth isn't all that great. So that would have been one thing. And two, that's something that could bounce Kulik and or Benson out of the top six, which I'm sorry, if you're a serious hockey team really trying to make the playoffs next season, I don't want those two guys to be relied on to be top six performers. I think that's frankly unfair to them. Everyone knows how I feel about Benson and the development. They're asking way too much of this guy. He's a great player. I love the metrics. I love the tenacity and the way he plays, but it's too much. He's just turning 20 this summer, and he's a smaller guy. And with Kulik, he just burst onto the scene last season, and at the beginning of last season, it wasn't that great. By the end of it, it was really good. It was awesome to see, but to rely on that on an 82 game season where it is like you guys have to make the playoffs. I'm not confident in that. So I actually would have been okay with a trade for Trevor Zegras in that sense. But here's a little bit when it comes to kind of like my knowledge of the Philly base. I was actually in Philadelphia when they traded Claude Giroux for Owen Tippett and whatever else they got back for that. And I remember the people I was with played hockey with them all my life. Smart hockey guys, knew the fundamentals and were, especially the one person I was talking to was a coach of mine. Great guy, really, really good coach. Not only coached players, but people and made people better people, which was great. But he basically said, like, we're trading someone that, yes, has skill, but he also has that Philly grit for someone like Owen Tippett, who's a perimeter player. And he was not happy because in Philly, they want the Broad Street bullies at all times. I understand that was back in the 70s, but that is just their culture. That's why Travis Konechny is such a beloved player there, and they think so fondly of him, and frankly, why I would like him on the Sabres. Luckily, it worked out with Owen Tippett, but my thought was like, oh boy, going from a spicier Peyton Krebs to a Trevor Zegras, I'm like, I wonder what they're thinking down there when it comes to some guy that's pretty much all flash and isn't hitting anyone, isn't necessarily getting to the dirty areas and stuff like that. I think things have changed a bit, especially when it comes to the more speed and skill of the NHL and how that's progressed. Of Michkov as well. You want to have some skill guys with him too. But I just found that interesting because I was there and saw the live reaction of people when Claude Giroux got traded. And it's definitely different. He was their captain and so much. But Claude Giroux was a perfect Philadelphia Flyer. Skilled and nasty, man. I mean, watching some of the games and the series between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh were just it's fantastic hockey from back in the day. So that's one thing I wanted to pull up. Another thing I want to say is Danny Briere is the GM, an all-skill guy who wasn't throwing his body around. No one would expect him to, but that made sense. That definitely made sense, Danny Briere bringing in a guy like that. So that was really cool to kind of see that kind of connection, make that connection to a more skilled guy where like Tortorella's out, probably not going down that route anymore, but Briere bringing him in it made sense. And lastly, another cool little fact that I found interesting. This was put out by, I believe, Bleacher Report. June 23rd is an interesting day for the Philadelphia Flyers. In 2011, they traded Jeff Carter and Mike Richards on this day. 2012, they traded I almost said Jeff Van Riemsdyk, James Van Riemsdyk. 2014, they traded Scott Hartnell. 2017, they traded Braden Shen. In 2025, they traded for Trevor Zegras. That is all on June 23rd. So I thought that was a little cool tidbit of information for the people. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good trade. I also think Anaheim, like you said, not really knowing where they're going, just to get like a solid bottom six guy and then some trade I guess trade assets, but with draft assets as well.
Yeah,
it's probably a decent trade for both.
And since you brought up Danny Briere, it does make me wonder because when Danny Briere was sent to Buffalo, he was, I believe, 25 years old. Zegras is 24 right now. I wonder how much of just looking at Zegras, like how much does Briere see himself in him? Like that's
Yeah,
kind of my main
absolutely.
question. Because for someone like Briere, I think Sabres fans bring this up all the time. Like they're always talking about which guy around the league could be like the next Danny Briere, just like a high offensive ceiling guy that's kind of caught on a bad team or, just caught down the lineup. And I wonder if Danny Briere himself, I wonder if he sees a little bit of Danny Briere and Trevor Zegras. So that'll be interesting to see. And I think, for that bet, just a second, fourth, and Ryan Poehling, that's just such an easy gamble for Philly to make. If it doesn't work out, those three pieces probably won't mount to much of anything. So I think it's a great trade for Anaheim or for Philly.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see him in the Flyers orange. I'm not the biggest Philly sports fan, even though I know about them, but I respect a Flyers jersey. I like them. So that'll be
I like
cool.
it better than the Ducks orange. I feel like the Ducks orange is way too aggressive on their new uniforms. It's like
It's not
just
good.
too much. I feel like Philly does it like tastefully.
Something I wanted to do for us is to do like a ranking or like a tier list of NHL jerseys. And at the bottom or in the F tier or whatever you want to call it, Anaheim's going to be there. It's just not good. It's just
Their
not good.
their logo is so good, but the uniforms are
They
horrible.
stink.
I just can't enjoy them, and that was probably like my favorite NHL logo. But I think the eggplant and jade, I feel like that was like half the magic with those uniforms. Replacing that with that neon orange and gold is just jarring. It's just not my style of uniform.
It's not good. So that is all for the Trevor Zegras side of things as well. That is all that I had. So just a reminder for everyone to go over and subscribe onto YouTube, or if you're watching this and you aren't subscribed yet, go subscribe. It's free. Doesn't hurt you, because we are doing the live stream on Friday starting at 6:45 p.m. Eastern for the NHL draft. That is when Walt is going to do his last mock draft. Looking forward to that for sure, to see how right he is. Come in here, heckle Walt when he's wrong. That's what we're looking for too. Come in here and let Walt know that he missed on this prospect and how could you and all that. So, and then come in and make fun of me for not being able to pronounce last names. Had to get one of those mentions in per show as per my quota. Anything else, Walt, that we really wanted to get into for the people? Running about 45 minutes at this point. So wanted to see if there's anything before we wrap up here.
On our YouTube too, I also dropped our first in the numbers video on Saturday. So I know we brought that up before on this podcast, but I kind of wanted to make like a series to help people, better understand the charts and whatnot that are posted on social media. Because I figure the more people we have involved in these discussions, the better. Because I know there's a bunch of people that kind of want to understand the charts, but there's really no how-to guide to understand these things. So I figured it'd be a good series to take, real life examples of Sabres players and kind of explain what their charts mean and kind of how I process these numbers and kind of how I look through things to evaluate players. So that's kind of the point of the series. I just want to, present the numbers for everyone and have everyone, make their own opinion with those numbers. Because at the end of the day, even with the same numbers presented in front of you, you could have a different opinion on those numbers as somebody else. So that's kind of the point with that series. And then, our draft live stream coming up Friday. And the funny thing is, this could be the first draft in a while. There's no Russian prospects picked in the first round. So it's perfect for Bill and his struggle with pronouncing Russian names. We could be making history. He could get lucky.
I could get lucky for sure. Looking forward to it, especially if someone takes him at like 29. We've been on for 3.5 hours and I'm dragging. Now I have to pronounce a Russian name. I don't think so. It's going to go poorly. It's kind of the expectation of me with last names is like the expectation that I had going into that Kevin Adams press conference. I'm like, at best, it's going to be meh. At best. So, yeah, looking forward to that. I forgot to plug the in the numbers thing, but that was a great video. Watch the full thing. Is definitely helpful. Barry, do you have maybe an idea of who you might do next? Not trying to put you on the spot, obviously, but wondering, when that next video might come out.
I think depending on how active the Sabres are during the draft or free agency, the next video will probably be their biggest either trade acquisition or free agent signing, because I figure that will be the most interesting player. or if Bowen Byram's still around a little bit into the off season, that's probably going to be the next guy I throw out there.
Cool. All right. Well, some into the number stuff maybe after the busy season of the draft and free agency. We hope to see you on Friday night. Almost said Saturday. Excuse me. Hope to see you on Friday night, 6:45 p.m. Eastern for the NHL draft. Really looking forward to that. If there's anything else, Walt has the last word.
My last word will be just go Sabres.